Hey guys, today I thought it would be fun to take you on a summer tour of our garden. Now, I showed you the garden for the very first time back at the beginning of March, and a whole lot has changed since then. So I'm going to take you around, show you what we've been working on, what we've gotten done, talk about our plans for the future, and just kind of give you an overall layout of our garden. Now, fun fact, it is the very end of June in Normandy. It's 8:30 at night, and it will not get dark here until almost 11 o'clock. So for someone like me who loves summer, this is phenomenal. Okay, so let's take our tour. So when you come in the driveway on the left, there is this old building, like 400 years old, and this served as the bakery for the property. Now, I've done a tour of this building, so if you're curious and you want to hear our plans for it, there is a video you can go back and watch, but I will give you just a quick peek in its current state. It has a good roof, solid walls. It's actually not going to take too much work to realize our plans for this building, so I think we'll probably tackle the first stages of that later this summer or fall. Okay, and let me show you something that's just outside of this bakery, which is awesome. Okay, so this tree right here, this is a bay laurel tree, so these are bay leaves. It's what you would use when you're cooking. And this tree is gigantic. So let me show you how tall this is. So it just keeps going and going and going. So needless to say, I will never need to buy bay leaves again. This is a huge tree, and I have no idea how old it is, but definitely looks like an old tree. Okay, so the next thing you encounter on our property is not as exciting. So we bought the house the very beginning of October, and early November, we had a crazy storm here. And my husband, he's more the weather guy, so he could tell you what it was exactly, but it was something like a jet stream combined with something else, which is a really strange phenomenon. And the result was that we had 100-mile-an-hour winds. Now, this was incredibly ironic because one of the reasons that we chose to move to Normandy, France, was because even though our house is just 4 miles from the coast, this area does not get hurricanes and extreme weather and all that sort of stuff. So definitely a freak storm and really crazy timing since we had just bought the house. And the result of all of that is that we have since taken down about 30 trees. Now, some of those trees came down in the storm. Some of them were damaged to a point that they really shouldn't remain standing. And then there were still others that were just too close to barns or other outbuildings that we just didn't want to risk having a problem in the future. So my husband has taken down just about all the trees. I think we have just a few remaining, and we have not yet gotten around to grinding up all these limbs. So at some point we will probably end up purchasing a chipper or shredder so that we can grind all of this up. And as you'll also see, we have quite a bit of firewood resulting from this. So not the gorgeous entrance I would like to have to the driveway, but this is real life and this is what we're dealing with. So we're just lucky that we didn't have any damage to any of our buildings, so we cannot really complain about that. Okay, so when you come around the driveway, this is what you see. And I will have shown you some of this in the previous garden tour, but since this is only the second, I will probably go over some things again just to make sure that if you're viewing for the first time, you kind of have a good lay of the land and kind of see how things are oriented. Okay, so this property has 3 barns. This one here on the left of the gate is the smallest of the barns. And then this one over here is our largest, and there's a third one attached to it, which you'll see when we enter the courtyard. Now, when we were looking for properties online, when I saw this gate, I was done searching. Like, this gate just really, I just think it's beautiful. And it's such a beautiful thing to come home to, and it just blows my mind that you can own a property like this. Okay, so before we go into the courtyard and I show you the house and the surrounding gardens, let me show you something that we discovered since we got here. Now, when we bought the house. We came and looked at the house in February, and we ended up buying it in October. So we had kind of a quick tour around the house when we came, and we saw this wall, and I think my husband and I each kind of poked our heads around, and it was just endless blackberries. All you could see was blackberries and ivy. So we kind of said, like, well, that'd be a cool place for a garden, and that was about all we thought about it. So we were out here trying to remove ivy from the back of the building, because one of the other things that has happened since we got here is that this ivy growing on the back of the building sometime over the course of the winter caused part of the wall to crumble and collapse. Now, this is a really, really thick wall, so it's not currently much of a structural issue, but it is something that we need to rebuild. So when you hear people say that ivy destroys buildings because it gets into the mortar, it totally does. This is what you get. So anyway, we were back here working on this and just trying to deal with the blackberries, because I mean, it was just wall-to-wall blackberries. And I came to visit my husband while he was working on it, and when I looked to the right, I caught a little glimpse of something through all the ivy. I was like, you know what, I think there's actually a wall there. I mean, and we're talking like you had to look hard, because this was not at all obvious. So I started ripping ivy off, and before you know it, we had our own secret garden. So this wall goes all the way around and surrounds it. There's cool little like window top things. It goes around the back side. It's almost complete. Like, there's a little section down here that has crumbled right there that could stand some rebuilding. But we had no idea it was here. And I know that sounds crazy, but the neighbor's property isn't the other side of the wall, it's in the front of this. And so we had no way of seeing this from his side, our side. No idea. So tons of work ahead of us. We've already been dealing with a lot of the blackberries and things, but we are going to have a secret garden. So I'm really excited to get some benches in here, figure out how we're going to, like, are we doing flower pots, are we doing like actual planted beds, I don't know, but super, super cool spot. And obviously, just to reassure everybody, we do realize we have to be careful around this wall right now. So we are not like actively pulling the ivy out in that area. We're being careful. All right, so that's our little surprise since we've gotten here. But let me take you into the courtyard and show you around. So you guys, whenever we come home from town, I am just completely blown away when we drive into the courtyard every time. I don't think I will ever stop being that way. I don't think I'll ever stop feeling just super appreciative that we're able to live here. I just feel like we're very, very fortunate. So this courtyard, when we bought the house, the gravel was absolutely covered over with weeds that had been there for a long time and were therefore like really difficult to deal with. Lots of things with tap roots and lots of moss. So we tried to get it under control with hand weeding. That's generally my preferred way of dealing with weeds. We don't like to do herbicides of any sort, but it was just too far gone for the hand weeding. Like, we'll probably get to that point, but we're not there. So I have since then, during the rainier part of the year, been using a propane weed torch to kill the weeds. Now that it's summer and it's dry, I this week switched to spraying vinegar, and that has been phenomenal. Like, I think this is our new way forward. Let me just show you. There were weeds here the other day, and like, if you see weeds in the driveway, it's only because I haven't sprayed them yet. So here's an area where I sprayed. There is nothing left. Fantastic. So I feel like we're at this stage with our garden. As you'll see when we walk around, there's a lot that needs to be done. I feel like we're at that stage where you're kind of playing that plate trick where you're trying to like spin a plate, and then you add a second plate, and you add a third plate, and you're trying to keep them all spinning. That's totally us right now, because you go get one thing under control and you start to work on something else, and then that first thing gets completely out of control again. So you kind of feel like you're treading water. Maybe you're even getting further behind. But anyway, this was a game changer this week with the vinegar in the driveway. It was like, okay, I now have a very reasonable way a very affordable way to deal with the driveway so that I can focus on something else and make some more progress. Okay, so since this may be one of the first times you're seeing our garden, I will go ahead and show you the barns. So there are 2 barns that are connected to each other on one side of the gate. So this is our medium barn here on the left, the largest barn there on the right, and then on the opposite side of the gate is the 3rd barn. It's our smallest barn. Now, I did do a video tour of this one, which is worth going back and watching if you haven't seen it. It has a loft inside that would have been original like sleeping quarters for somebody like 400 years ago when the house was new. It still has the remains of 2 old fireplaces. Really a cool building, and I'm very excited about the possibilities of things we can do with that loft in the future. Okay, so if we flip back to the other 2 barns. So this, the largest of the barns, during that crazy 100-mile-an-hour storm, the wind was blowing hard enough that it actually broke the old pulleys, which is crazy. And so my husband had to order new pulleys and repair that door. And then this medium-sized barn next to it that connects did not have a door when we bought the property. So my husband built this one, and we tried to do it using materials that were like kind of left behind in the barn as much as possible to kind of keep costs down. So he had to buy, you know, the pulleys, the hardware for the top, and 2 pieces of galvanized tin, but everything else was just lumber and a sheet of tin that was salvaged from the barn. So that was a really low cost project, and I think it, you know, just has added a lot visually to the barns. They look a lot more finished and neat, but just functionality wise too, it's been really nice having a door that we can pull shut. And that loft door needs a little bit of a repair, and it will be getting some paint too, so that'll be another glow up for the barn. Okay, so like I said, we're very much early stages of this garden tour. So I am doing a lot of like patient wait and watch right now, because what I don't want to do is get rid of things and then find later that maybe I was a little too hasty and I got rid of something I didn't realize what I had, kind of thing. So the previous owners left a lot of flower pots with stuff in them, and a lot of it's weeds, right? Like a lot of it's clear weeds. But right now I'm just kind of watching to see what comes up before I toss anything. And I'm glad I have, because for example, this right here is a hydrangea, and now that I can see that, I just need to find a place to plant it in the yard. So definitely worth dealing with a little bit of weedy pot action for a bit, if it means that I get some plants that I can use in the yard. Now the house did come with 2 potted olive trees. This one here, and then there's one on the other end of the barnyard. So definitely nice trees, and they'll only get more beautiful with time. So I need to figure out a good spot for them, because I think they just really don't stand out against the stone wall right now. So I'm still pondering that. Okay, so I'll show you these 2. When I did a video tour of the bakery, somebody in the comments mentioned that we had the posts from an old World War II fence, and we didn't really know what they were talking about, so we went back and looked, and yep, absolutely we did. They were right. So back during World War II, when they needed to put up fences and kind of do it quietly and secretly, they would have fencing parties at night. And so they had these posts that they could, like some of them have like corkscrews in the bottom that they could just screw into the ground, and then with these loops you would just run the wire through them and you would have a fence. So cool piece of history. The previous owners had been using them in their vegetable garden, and that's probably what we'll do again. Just really glad to have those and to know what they are now. So as you're going to see when we walk around the yard, a lot of overgrown areas, a lot of ivy to deal with, a lot of stinging nettle and blackberries, and that's going to be something you're going to hear me saying on repeat, because I've got my work cut out for me as far as that stuff goes. But we also have a lot of great things like beautiful roses, and some of them probably old varieties based on how fragrant they are and the number of blooms. This is one of 2 wells on the property. This one is shared with the neighbor. The other one is completely ours. And vines are going to be a recurring theme. Do not want the beautiful stonework to be damaged. So all of these vines will go. And these beds, this whole side of this barn, this is a neighbor's barn, was completely covered in vines when we bought it. So I have been working my way around and clearing a lot of that type of stuff. Okay, so, let me show you in the center of the courtyard. When we bought the house, in the center of the courtyard was this bush here, which is beautiful. I have not gotten around to looking up the variety yet, but the flowers look like bottle brushes, and the bees love it, and it's beautiful. So it is a showstopper, and it will stay in the courtyard. But what we did remove already was a tree that was also in the courtyard. And we did this because when you come in the driveway, or when you came in the driveway, that tree blocked the view of the house, which was a real shame. And when you were in the house looking out, it blocked the view of the gate, which was also a shame. So it had to go. No regrets about that. I think it already has really enhanced the courtyard. Now, right now, the center of the courtyard has grass. My vision long term is to take all that grass up and have it be a planted bed, something a little more formal and symmetric. So I may start working on that in the fall. What I'm thinking is first stage is like dwarf boxwoods around the outer ring, so that we have a really nice hedge kind of as the outer ring, and then inside of it additional plantings, short stuff up to the bush in the center. So that is a project that I am eager to get started on, because obviously the sooner we do it, the sooner the row of the hedgerow will mature. Okay, so let's talk about the other thing that is really special about this front garden, and that is definitely the wisteria on the house. So earlier this spring it was blooming. It was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, I have never had wisteria before, and I had read that it only bloomed once a year. However, I'm starting to wonder about that, because we are now getting more flowers. So I initially thought maybe it was a few late ones. However, over the last couple days, I'm starting to see signs that more and more of them are coming. So maybe we'll get 2 sets of blooms a year, which would be really great, because it's fantastically beautiful. Now, when we bought the house, the wisteria was trained up to the first floor, like you see across the house, with the exception of the end of the house with our Jeet. That's over here. And they had it trained kind of growing all the way up to the top roof. And it had not completely covered the house yet, but it definitely had in some places. And it had gotten up into the gutters, and it was starting to try to get under the roof tiles. So that's not a good scenario. We don't want to have a damaged roof. We don't want to have drainage problems. So we cut that back down to match the first story kind of line across the whole house. And I think that was a really good decision. So I do have to come out here periodically and trim this to kind of keep it neat and looking like this. We have a few places where it's not fully grown in, and I'm working on kind of training it to grow and cover where it needs to. But just really, really beautiful. The contrast between that and the stone is just phenomenal. Now, the front bed is something that I have a lot to figure out. So I do my kind of watch and see what I have thing. Have been doing just that, and there are things that are beautiful, poppies and borage and all sorts of things coming up. Now, the thing is, the overall appearance of this front bed is very messy. I think it needs to be a little more like shorter stuff and the little things that are a little more neat and controlled. To me, a lot of the stuff that's in this front bed right now is stuff that really belongs at the back of a garden bed. Things that have a lot of height, that maybe have a short season. They're phenomenal when they're growing, but then when they're not, they're looking like this guy here, Red Hot Poker, just kind of looking like a tired mess for the rest of the year. And that's fine when it's in the back of a garden bed, because you just don't see that and you can kind of cut it back, and then other things kind of are the showstoppers at that point. But when it's the only thing, when there's nothing else in front of it, it's really not that great. So like, here are lots and lots of examples of things that were pretty for a short time, and now they're just a hot mess, and it ends up unfortunately looking like a weed patch, even though there are some really great plants here. So my plan, as I've kind of been watching to see what we have, is to relocate some of these things to other parts of the yard. And I don't know what I want to put up here yet, so I'm kind of being slow about it. But like I said, this is year one, and we are learning what we have. Okay, now, I don't think I had any porch furniture when I did the first video. So we like to shop secondhand whenever we can. So the umbrella came with the house, which is great. And we actually managed to find a small outdoor furniture set. So we need a lot more pieces for the yard, but we have a place where we can sit out here and enjoy the terrace. And this front terrace is phenomenal. It goes across the whole front of the house. And I've started to work on, I've bought lavender plants just so we had a little bit of something going on, and they're just in inexpensive pots this year. And I will probably relocate them to other parts of the yard eventually, but for now, we're kind of trying to keep our gardening on a budget, so this gives us a little something in the meantime. My herb garden, I want to do a really formal herb garden, and we can talk about that when we get around to the back. But I am trying to get a head start on my plants, so I bought small herbs like this rosemary and thyme, so that by the time I plant my herb garden, I'll have larger, more mature plants to put in the ground. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, is picking up herbs when we're at vide greniers, which are like flea markets, that sort of thing. And as I'm weeding, I'm finding some treasures. This was mint that was on a hillside in the backyard. I don't generally like to have mint running loose in the yard, so I've dug it up, and now I've got it in a pot where we can kind of have more control over it and enjoy it. And like I said, some of these are just pots that were left behind from the previous owner, so we're just kind of living with what we've got right now and planning. Okay, so that's pretty much the courtyard. Let me show you some of the other areas in the yard. Okay, so right next to the courtyard, oh, and I will mention as we're walking this way, so you see this stone wall here. We also didn't know we had that when we bought the house. It was completely overgrown with stuff, and I've been working to uncover it. I still haven't uncovered all of it. And so right now this bed has a bunch of bushes of, I don't know what the variety, but long term I'm just thinking maybe they get switched out with high bush blueberries or something that we'd have some added value from. So we'll see. Now at the end of this bed, where this wall is that I just showed you, I was told that there's a plum tree in here. So I guess that's this, or maybe the one behind it. So I'll be keeping an eye on that to see what happens. So the jury is still out on that one. And so back to that storm with the 100-mile-an-hour winds. This is our orchard. We have a small orchard on the property that already does have some fruit trees. And during that storm, the orchard did not fare well. So if you see those poplars right there, there was a second row of them, which we've taken down. And one of them came over in the storm, right in line with a bunch of the fruit trees. So it hit the fig tree. Let's see. This was a fig tree. It hit that and clobbered it. It was absolutely covered in fruit at the time, so that was really sad. But luckily, it's coming back. so it will live to see another day. And it clobbered the apple tree because the fig tree fell on the apple tree. And we kind of thought this one was a goner. It totally looked like a goner. But, and I'm actually just seeing this now for the first time. Look what I'm seeing. Let's see, can I get in there? Maybe. Anyway, there are apples on the tree, and I'm seeing that for the first time, even if I'm not succeeding in showing them to you. So, I was hopeful that if we left this tree, that because there's so many apple trees in the area, that even though we didn't have another one in our yard to pollinate it, that maybe it would have one close enough by that it would still get pollinated. It looks like it has, so I'll have to show my husband when I go in later that we actually have apples, so that's really great. Okay, so in addition to the fig tree, the plum tree, the apple tree, we also have, I believe, 4 cherries. And that's what these are here. So, the birds 100% beat me to them this year. We've just had too much going on. But really excited to have a start on an orchard and to be able to come in and add a few things later. So my focus is on trying to first prioritize growing things that are expensive at the grocery store. So not necessarily fruit trees, but if we're talking about fruit, things like raspberries are expensive here. So I would like to get some raspberries planted. Just trying to focus on things that are going to save us some money. Okay, so next area of the garden. So if you go through this gate here, this is the Jeet. This last 4 windows on the house is our Jeet, which is like a self-contained apartment that normally in France you would rent out to vacationers. We're just keeping it for friends and family and just our own use. But you come around here, it has its own driveway, separate from ours. And if you haven't seen it yet, I have a video that is a complete tour of the inside of the Jeet before we started furnishing it. So that's definitely worth a watch. Now, I think probably because they were using this as a money-earning income, like a proper income property, they put a lot more effort into landscaping over here. So there's a lot of really nice landscaping, but it was kind of overplanted. So there are just way too many things here. So I've got my work cut out for me in getting this area cleaned up. But like I said, at this point, still trying to watch and learn what we've got. I now know we've got rhododendron. They were white when they were blooming on either side of the terrace. Here's the other. There's a bay tree, another bay laurel back here. Super healthy, but it will probably go because we don't want tree roots that close to the foundation. Okay, so when they designed this area, they made it so that the Jeep basically had its own separate garden. So it's completely overgrown right now. There's normally a staircase right here that goes up to a second tier of the Jeet Garden. And I will attempt to take you up there. But again, beautiful, beautiful plants, things that I have not grown myself before, so I still have some things to identify. If you know what something is, you can definitely let me know in the comments. Alright, so we're going to attempt to come up here, hopefully without too many stinging nettle and blackberries grabbing hold of me. Okay, we've almost made it up. Okay, so needless to say, that so-called staircase needs a major clean out. But you get up to this garden and all sorts of beautiful things. So, again, this area majorly overrun right now with hay and stinging nettle and blackberries and all the invasives, ivy. This is stinging nettle if you've not seen it before, and it does kind of sting you if you touch it. So this is one of those areas that I have a lot of things to remove, and then I will kind of have a better idea of what plants are here, because right now it just looks like a hot mess, but there's all kinds of stuff in there. So it's just kind of a nice little private garden area that's sort of enclosed by the hedge. Okay. And since we're up here, I think we'll stay up here and I will show you the backyard next. Okay, so if you cut back through here, and I haven't mentioned yet, but we have about 2.5 acres with the property. I think back in the day it would have had an insane amount of acreage, but 2.5 acres is good because it's manageable, but still a decent amount of space. So we have a nice flat backyard that we are kind of working to tame. The perimeter has kind of gotten shrunk in by a lot of invasives, so we've been working on regaining that area, and I'll show you an area that we're working on now back here. Okay, so like I said, the back property line had been majorly encroached upon by ivy, mostly just ivy, since it's shady. And if you can see this area that's kind of brown amid the grass, that was all overgrown with grass and ivy and such. And my husband bush hogged it. So now we're going to keep it mowed down so that it doesn't get tall again. Now I still, at some point, I need to come in and probably hand remove the ivy. So that's a big job. I had been burning it out in the winter and that was working really, really well. You can kind of see areas that I burned out. It just has not come back. So it may be that I wait and deal with that in the fall or the winter again, just to get it done quickly. Okay, and the other area that I have been working on and my husband has also been helping me with, another perimeter that had been totally encroached upon with the invasives, was the side of our yard. And everywhere that you see brown was stinging nettle. I mean, an absolute sea of stinging nettle. So I have been ripping it out by hand, and my husband commented that, you know, it really, I think he probably thought I was crazy at the beginning of the project. I don't think he realized how much yard had been lost to the nettle, but now that it's clear, you can really see we have gained back a ton of yard. So I still have maybe another half a day on this project. A little bit of nettle to pull out still, and then I've now exposed some areas with English ivy that I will hand pull. But the plan is that we will now continually mow this when we mow everything else so that it doesn't get grown up again. And I will show you my plan. We have this nice hedge here, and it's I don't know the name of it. It's something that you see a lot in the area, and it is very easy to like prune and have like the perfect straight lines and all of that. So it's nice, it's evergreen. What I want to do, since it ends here, inexplicably it ends here instead of continuing down the side, we have all these little offshoots. So I plan to, once we get everything cleaned up, to dig those up and plant them along here, and that way we'll just continue that hedge and it won't cost us anything to do it. So that's the goal there. Okay, now a couple weird things with the yard. So quite a bit of drop off between the backyard and this back terrace area, and so I'm working on figuring out what we want to plant here so that we have pretty flowering things that look nice but also that control erosion. So still working on that. I kind of have a test going in the next area of the garden, and I'll show you that. But while we're up here, before we go down, so okay, on this top level, I don't want anyone to, like kids, I'm thinking, running across the backyard, not realizing there's a drop off and then over the edge. So I have started a hedgerow here. This is all just lavender, just something there so that you know that you have a reason to stop, and that carries over here. And that's the first peek of our Lavoie garden where we're headed next. Okay, so this is a super sketchy staircase in the hillside that we've inherited. We're kind of starting to think through how we want to make a new staircase there. Super sketch, gotta be careful, but it works for now. Okay, so here's that hillside, and the previous owners were not doing anything with it. They weren't cutting the grass on it or anything, so we've at least started weed eating it, which looks nicer. There was a row of kind of scraggly bushes here that my husband has pulled for me. But here's our test for plants that are going to like control the hillside, prevent erosion, that sort of thing, but look nice. This is, these plants that you see in the hillside are soapwort, and they get flowers. They will eventually be absolutely covered in flowers, but for now we've got like little ones here and there as they're getting started. But when we planted them, they were tiny, and they're slowly spreading over the hillside. So that will completely, in theory, that'll completely cover the hillside, and then that'll be something that doesn't really require much maintenance besides a little bit of weeding, and will prevent any kind of erosion. Now, this here is the Lavoie garden. It's definitely one of my favorite places in the garden. This, if you haven't heard me talk about it before, is a Lavoie. Back when this house was newer, this would have been the washing machine. So you would have washed your clothes at home and then brought them here to rinse them. So this part right here that is sloped was where you would have put your clothes to kind of like squeeze the water out so that it ran back into the Lavoie. So it is now used as a pond, and you can see all the water lilies. I may be able to find one that's open. I think they kind of close up for the evening. Here's one. So I kind of feel like we've got a little bit of Monet action here, if I can do this without dropping the phone. So we've got some water lilies, which is pretty. And the previous owners had koi fish in it. There are not any fish in it currently because it has a leak. But I have a plan to fix the leak this summer or this fall. And then the water will be much higher, so it'll be within maybe like 6 inches probably is what we'll do at the top of the pond. Right now we're having to add water pretty regularly. But these junipers that you see along the fence, there was a really scraggly hedge there that was not evergreen, and we ripped that out this year and then planted back these junipers, which were teeny tiny when we put them in the ground, but have already grown quite a bit. So they are designed so that, well, that particular variety will grow 10 to 12 feet tall, but they won't get very wide. So this is not a huge garden, and we didn't want to lose garden space. I didn't want to lose the ability to walk around the pond, Lavoie. So these will grow really tall without taking up much width. Okay, and I should mention, if you haven't seen, this is off of our kitchen, so it's just a really nice place to pop out into the yard. And I guess the final thing I will show you, the previous owners had a vegetable garden, and they hadn't used it in years, but they still kind of had the area covered, and you can kind of see the perimeter here where it was. Now, let me walk out here and show you. So this kind of sits behind the kitchen. Makes a lot of sense. And I had initially just figured we would also have a vegetable garden there. However, I've had a bit of a rethink, because these windows here, this larger one is the upstairs living room, the second floor living room, and this one is our bedroom. So I am now thinking that we're going to use this as a formal herb garden with like the boxwood edging, just something really formal, mapped out, very, very symmetric, because then when we look out either of those windows or the kitchen, we will have this beautiful garden that we're looking out on, and with the hillside staircase right there, I will have a very easy way to walk up and access our herb garden. So that is the state of our garden here at the end of June. Some projects accomplished, lots and lots more to go, but I'm really excited about the space and its potential, and I hope that you are too. I will continue to update you as we make progress on any of these garden spaces. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.